Hi, everyone. My name is Dominic Ramos, and this is Scrub Talk. Oh my gosh, it's happening. It really is happening. I am so unbelievably excited right now. I feel just a little jittery at the moment, but I'm also feeling really grateful and overall happy to be starting this process. This is it. This is our first Scrub Talk podcast. And I should be better at this because I've recorded a couple episodes already. And I must say, it is so exciting to start something new and fresh. And I've been wanting to start a podcast for a while, but I don't know. I'm one of those people who waits for the right moment to do something. And sometimes that moment usually just passes me by. So it's a new year, or it's about to be a new year. Right now it's the holiday season, and we're just getting things all started. So yeah, this is it. It's Scrub Talk. So in case the title and the cover art didn't give it away, yes, this is another healthcare podcast. I know some of you might be rolling your eyes because there are just way too many podcasts out there that talk about healthcare and medicine. So I'm here because I just know you're going to listen to me, right? Oh my God, the ego is just crazy. Most of you are not going to know who I am. I'm not a physician or a nurse. I'm not a celebrity healthcare worker. I am far from that. In fact, I am at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to people who work in the industry. So let's just get to know one another, okay? As I said before, my name is Dominic. I am 27 years old. I'm a student at the University of Virginia. Go Who's. I'm a full-time health worker. I have been working in healthcare since 2021. I first started in pharmacy. I was working in retail pharmacy for a bit, and now I'm a medical assistant. I've worked in several specialties. I first started in family medicine, then I moved on to general surgery, then ENT, or ear, nose, and throat, head and neck surgery, and now I work in radiation oncology. My goal for the future, the very near future, is to go to medical school and become a doctor. Go figure. There aren't enough podcasts out there by aspiring doctors. I get it. But I just felt like now is the right time to start one, because I'll tell you this, I love podcasting. I think podcasts are amazing. I fell in love with them during the pandemic. This was during a time where we were just flooded with so much negatively charged information. And for me, it was often difficult to stay engaged because of all the vitriol and polarized information that was out there. And I found safety in podcasts. One thing I love about them is that they have such a free-form nature to them. I found myself often gravitating to shows like Unlocking Us and Dare to Lead by Brene Brown, the Man Enough podcast by Justin Baldoni. And I'm even a fan of those shows that are just, I don't know what the best term to use for them is. brain rot, just pure brain rot. I love shows like Beer Saws. If you haven't listened to them, then I highly suggest you do. If you want to just turn off your brain for a second. The crazy thing about podcasts is that you just never know what you're going to get. But there's no doubt in my mind that the people that are hosting them are as real as ever. And that's what makes this content appealing for me. Personally, I feel like podcasts are a really great medium for storytelling and connecting with others. And as someone who has spent his life working around healthcare and the last 3 years working in healthcare, this content just makes so much sense to me. As a medical assistant or an MA, the most rewarding job or the most rewarding part of my job outside of caring for people is building connections with them and their loved ones. I take great pride in the fact that my patients trust me to care for them when they're feeling more vulnerable than they've probably ever been in their life. And those moments that we share teach me so much about humanity, and the lessons that I've gained from those experiences have been so valuable. And it's important to me that these experiences are shared for the sole purpose of bettering other people's lives. And you might not get that from the show's name, which we're going to delve into what Scrub Talk is and why the hell I named it that. First thing to check off here is, why is it called Scrub Talk? I'm actually smiling because I'm brought back to the days when I lived with my grandparents. I had a pretty unique Asian American upbringing. My granddad was a flight surgeon in the US Navy. Whenever he came home, he would always change into a fatigue shirt and a worn pair of scrub bottoms that he had probably swiped from the OR in years past. And that was his go-to outfit whenever he was home. He'd wear scrubs when he was doing yard work, cleaning the house. He even wore scrubs to bed, which is quite funny to me because now that I've been working in healthcare, I can see why the man chose scrubs as his daily driver. Scrubs are just, I don't even know where to begin. They're just so wonderful, man. If you're an MA, nurse, even a physician, I'm hoping you can attest to how amazing scrubs are. Think about it. Coming home from a 12-hour shift, boom, you can slip them off. There's no guesswork involved. No need to unbutton, unzip, or unbuckle anything. You just slip them off. Same goes for when you're about to go to work. You don't need to match them with another article of clothing. You don't need to iron them. You don't need to fix them a certain way. Unless you're one of those Daisy Award winners. You can just slip on a pair, make sure at least that they're the same color, and you're good to go. Man, I'm finding myself just thinking of all the ways. I mean, scrubs they're lightweight, they're breathable. I don't know if I mentioned it already. They're super comfortable. And recently they've been quite fashionable, I might add. I don't know if you've heard of Figs or Janu or Fabletics. Those scrubs are really nice. I mean, they come in these really nice colors. Scrubs just look good nowadays. They have nicely colored tops. The jogger style bottoms are just really nice. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the collaboration that some physicians and med students have with Patagonia. That is some top tier stuff. Okay. I am so sorry. I just derailed there. Okay. I'm laughing right now because my ADHD is terrible, and also because I just thought about one of my coworkers who's probably listening to this and going, "Oh my God, Dominic is he's going crazy right now." I'm thinking about one of my nursing colleagues. Her name is Zenaida. Shout out to her, by the way. I'm hoping I can introduce you guys to her at some point. She's just really amazing, but I could just see her face right now if she was right in front of me. I can just see her listening to this and going, well, someone definitely had an alcoholic beverage. Oh, man. Okay, we need to regroup. All right. Where were we? What is Scrub Talk? Why is it called Scrub Talk? Well, the show's title is definitely a play on words. It's a nod to the industry. And it's also a nod to the people who work in it. Scrub Talk is inspired by those everyday conversations that us health workers have. Not just with patients, but with each other. I'm talking about the times where we are able to just step away from the office or from our unit and walk with each other to the cafeteria or coffee shop or vending machine and just catch up with each other. Maybe even check in with people from other departments. When I worked in the hospital, most of my collegial relationships were with people who I had basically developed a rapport with by phone or Epic In-Basket. And these people could have been working down the hall, the floor above me, maybe even on the other side of campus. But it always felt nice finally bumping into a person that you've been talking to for the last few weeks, few months, and finally being able to put a face to the name. And there's a solidarity in that because you've been working with these people, whether or not it's every day in person or via Teams or by phone, and you guys all have one thing in common, which is you're there to help other people. And that's what this podcast is for. You know, there's so many podcasts out there that are made by physicians, by nurses, by medical students. And I feel like those shows are often, whether it's by design, unintentionally geared towards an audience that more or less occupies the same profession as the people hosting it. And in an ideal world, I love the fact that this podcast can be for anybody. I don't want this podcast to be for MAs, even nurses or CNAs by extension. And I definitely don't want Scrub Talk to focus on patients and caregivers, because if you really think about it, all of us are patients and all of us are caregivers. And my goal is to start a podcast that can talk about some really important issues and moments that happen across the health spectrum. And I really think that from an audience perspective, this podcast is really for anyone. It's for everyone, whether you're practicing at the top of your license or you're someone like me who's a novice in the early stages of their career. Because I'm a firm believer in the notion that we can all continue learning, but not only that, we can all definitely learn more from one another. And it's important that we acknowledge this because as a society, I think we find ourselves at an inflection point. You know, I first began working during the pandemic, and looking back when we were all on lockdown, when stores were closed and we were doing drive-through vaccination clinics. That was a scary time for us. It's crazy to think that that was all 2-3 years ago. And so much has changed since then. There's newer technologies, newer treatment modalities, there's newer therapies, newer ideas on how we can deliver healthcare, especially here in the United States. Since starting my career, I have developed a deep interest in this period that we call the Great Resignation, this mass exodus of health workers from the industry over the last few years. If you don't know what the Great Resignation is, I encourage you to actually look up the U.S. Surgeon General's article in the New England Journal of Medicine. Dr. Vivek Murthy posted this right before he brought the nation's attention to health worker burnout, which is one of the most fascinating topics for me. Throughout this article, he talks about loneliness and burnout and how it's not just affecting our health workers, but it's affecting our entire health system. There's some pretty jarring numbers. I don't know what the current data is based off of these projections that he cited. I think it would provide some perspective. Consider this. Some 52% of nurses and 20% of doctors say they are planning to leave their clinical practice. Shortages of more than 1 million nurses are projected by the end of the year. And a gap of 3 million low-wage health workers is anticipated over the next 3 years. We are at a time now where technology and social media just dominate the landscape. I mean, it really does impact the way we deliver healthcare. Information is literally in the palm of our hands. It's at our fingertips. And while I'm glad it makes information more accessible, because that's what we want, is for people to gain and retain more knowledge, it also makes things like misinformation and disinformation more prevalent than ever. And if you're listening to this at release, I don't think we can touch on any of the subjects that I've partially mentioned without addressing the elephant in the room. So a couple of weeks ago, the CEO of United Healthcare, which is the largest U.S. health insurance provider, was murdered. And I'll be honest with you, this has given me quite a bit of anxiety. This event puts so much into perspective for me as someone who is aspiring to play a bigger role as a physician and possibly as a leader. I think that it's incredibly frustrating that insurance companies like United Health have been allowed to essentially cheat and abuse their consumers with little to no consequences. It's, forgive me, almost as brazen as the person who murdered their CEO. And I'm starting to think about some of the figures that have really been all over the media with regards to United. I think they were talking about United's denial rate when it comes to claims. The last number I saw was, I can't remember if it was like 42% or 47%, but it's about 3 times as high as other third-party payers. And I think we can all agree that the denial rate is not the only issue. It's much more than that. It sucks, but a lot of it does have to do with money. You know, while I was following this event, I stumbled across a Kaiser Family Foundation report which discussed the burden of medical debt in the U.S. And this year alone, the estimate comes out to around $220 billion in medical debt for all Americans. Think about that. $220 billion. That's a lot of cheddar. I can't begin to imagine the things that we could be doing with that much money. I'm wondering how many life-saving therapies we could be funding with $220 billion, let alone $1 billion. I'm wondering, what if we spent that money on building more community health centers and hospitals in places where there are health deserts, like rural communities and low-income suburban areas? What if we expanded access to cancer screenings and genetic testing, as well as childhood and adult vaccines? Here's an idea. How about we pay our health workers a better wage? Something that they truly deserve and can live on. I know I could be making more money. And the same applies to others who work in healthcare. I know plenty of nurses who could be making more money. I know plenty of technicians and other allied health professionals that could be making more money. What about the people who support us? People who support us in the hospitals and outpatient centers, our administrative personnel, our sanitation workers, our food workers. Those people could be making more money. Our residents could be making more money. Medical students, nursing students could be making more money. The system is so fragmented, and it saddens me because there are so many systemic issues that just keep driving us apart. We're losing connection with each other. I have many patients who are really, really sick, and I know they want to feel better. But it feels like they can't when their insurance companies place so many hurdles in their way. And on the flip side, us providers have our own problems to deal with. It's not just the insurance companies. Personally, I've worked in environments where temperatures run pretty hot, and personal ambition and ego and jealousy it can cause delays in patient care. And that can feel very frustrating for people who just want to take care of the patient. And if you're still listening, I'm hoping we can both agree that the topics I'm touching on are quite nuanced. One of the goals I have for our audience is for all of us to have a questioning attitude, to commit to a life of learning. And we're going to have more discussions like this. We're going to talk with some people who they're way smarter than me, have way more experience and so much more knowledge to impart. And I'm hoping that you'll tag along because it's going to be a hell of a ride. Anyways, that seems like a good place for us to stop. Wow, we did it. That's our first podcast episode in the books. If you made it this far, I first want to thank you for taking the time to listen. Look, I know I talk a lot. I'm quite energetic and I get easily excited. So I appreciate you for bearing with me throughout this whole journey. I really appreciate you just being patient with me while I figure this whole podcasting thing out. If you enjoyed what you heard, then please like, follow, and subscribe to Scrub Talk wherever you get your podcasts. Also, if you know someone that might enjoy listening to this show, then please share it with them. I'm looking forward to the next one. Thanks for listening. Again, I'm Dominic Ramos, and this is Scrub Talk.